Deep state media and the dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials, and we don't have any millennials. What happened? All the millennials are working today. Actually, one of them is taking an online course, and I think he has a test today. That's Garrick Ross. The other two one's in cybersecurity, and one works for the state. So they are out today. But with me today is Warren Miller. So welcome, Warren.
Happy to be here.
And we also have with us Christopher Hopkins, our assistant producer, and of course, Adam Coutura, our producer. And this podcast is called Deep State Media, and of course, the dumbest bill in America. So first up, so the media has been attacking Donald Trump literally for the last 3 weeks about hydroxychloroquine and the fact that the media thinks it doesn't work. And it's mad at Donald Trump for saying, why don't we at least try it, have the right to try, because there is some evidence, that it actually does work in certain circumstances. And rather than just saying, let's not even try it because it hasn't gone through all of the proper trials, why would we wait if it could actually save lives? So for 2 weeks, the media's been talking about this. 2 weeks, and finally, we have an incredible segment from Dr. Mark Siegel. Yes, Dr. Mark Siegel on Fox News. He was on Tucker Carlson, and he talked about not just hydroxychloroquine, but a personal story about how it saved his father's life. We have that clip, and here it is.
Also, it's been shown to decrease uptake into the cell. Also, it's been shown to decrease the kind of inflammation that leads to the kind of inflammatory pneumonias that we're actually seeing with COVID-19. That's all in the background of this. Now, there's clinical trials emerging in Rutgers, at NYU, at Penn. There's one coming out in China right now, preliminary in 62 patients, that appears to show that it decreases severity early in the game, before you end up hospitalized, before you end up on a ventilator. So if you're a doctor and you take into account the side effects here, and there are some, you may decide that it's well worth it for particular patients. Tucker, I want to tell you about a 96-year-old man in Florida who said one night, I don't think I'm going to make it. I feel very weak. The end is coming. I'm coughing. I'm short of breath. I can't get up from the couch. The next day, he was on hydroxychloroquine and antibiotics per his cardiologist. He got up the next day. He was fine. This man is my father.
So that's Dr. Mark Siegel talking about his very personal story. And literally, at that particular point, you can't hear it, but you can certainly see the visual where he was actually ready to break down and cry, because this particular medicine was made available to his 96-year-old father and clearly saved his life. I'm sorry, media, this isn't anecdotal anymore. There's actually some really strong evidence that hydroxychloroquine saves lives. And all throughout the past few weeks, all they've done, Warren, is attack the President of the United States and say, oh, how can you actually promote something that doesn't work? Why would you be doing that? And of course, Trump says, well, because it saves lives. Any follow-up on this? I mean, what are your thoughts about the media and just how deep state they've become?
There's a couple things. If I get COVID or a family member gets COVID or somebody else, the decision on how to treat it should be between that person and a doctor. And there's something called compassionate use. So if the doctor believes in this as an effective remedy, that's between the patient and the doctor, not the media. And unfortunately, the media had to react to the president the way they did. God knows how many people have died in Michigan and New York because the governors came out and said, you can't prescribe these drugs. So looking at that, I certainly hope the clinical trials get done soon. I know FDA's already given a preliminary approval to using this combination of drugs.
Yes.
And from everything I've seen from multiple reports, not only from the US, but from places like Spain and England, when they prescribe these drugs, the patients have a shorter recovery time. It drops by a day. And a lot of the dramatic effects in the lungs don't occur, the lung damage that we're seeing with COVID, if it's not treated properly. So for those reasons, I think it's ridiculous to trust the media to know what's right or wrong for you to get well from COVID.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, by the way, a brilliant point about the 2 states. How many people died in those 2 states as a result of the governors initially saying, and for at least a couple of weeks in Michigan, Governor Whitmer said, oh no, we are banning you, prohibiting you as a doctor, as a physician, of prescribing hydroxychloroquine because there's no proof. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, this is why as an elected official, and I don't talk about that very often on this podcast, and you are too, Warren. This is why as an elected official, I'm against the right to die. These kinds of legislation where legislators passed a law that say the doctor can help you die because you have the right of physician-assisted suicide, because we already have a party, it's the Democrat Party, and we're seeing it in real time in the media, as far as I'm concerned, that thinks it's okay that people die because they want to win a political race. It's disgusting. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. And here's further evidence. The media asked Trump in his press conference, will Indian Prime Minister Modi withhold exporting hydroxychloroquine to the United States? So obviously the medicine is made in India, among other places, and suddenly the media has pivoted from hydroxychloroquine bad, Trump bad, and to, well, why don't we have enough of it, President Trump? Literally in 24 hours, the media cycle changed on a dime like that. We have this clip, the media asking President Trump about Prime Minister Modi, and here it is.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Are you worried about retaliation to your decision to ban export of medical goods, like Indian Prime Minister Modi's decision to not export hydroxychloroquine to the United States and other countries?
I don't like that decision. I didn't hear that was his decision. I know that he stopped it for other countries. I spoke to him yesterday. We had a very good talk, and we'll see whether or not that's his. I would be surprised if he would, because India does very well with the United States. For many years, they've been taking advantage of the United States on trade. So I would be surprised if that were his decision. He'd have to tell me that. I spoke to him Sunday morning, called him, and I said, we'd appreciate your allowing our supply to come out. If he doesn't allow it to come out, that would be okay. But, of course, there may be retaliation. Why wouldn't there be?
Yeah, so the media initially is hydroxychloroquine bad, but now they're saying they pivoted. Well, why, Mr. President, are we dependent on Prime Minister Modi in India? And what are you going to do to make sure? Are you going to retaliate? I mean, that's actually a good question. Okay, finally, they're asking the key questions, which is, we need the medicine, we don't have enough of it, why isn't it being made here? And are these really allies if they're not going to provide us the medication? Any thoughts on this, Warren?
Well, I know they've reopened a plant in West Virginia, I believe, that used to make it.
Yes.
Before former administrations saw fit to tax those plants and chase them out of the U.S. So hopefully this industry will start to thrive here and will create jobs. And hopefully in the future when you get COVID, you just go see the doctor, they prescribe you these drugs, and you don't end up on a ventilator. You don't end up in the Javits Center in New York or the Convention Center in Baltimore. You recover and you live a normal life. And there might be some extreme circumstances, but they're going to be far fewer than what we're experiencing now because our medical system is not buying into the fact that this stuff is an effective treatment.
Exactly. And the president actually, with this facility in West Virginia and others in the United States, but I think primarily, you're right, it is West Virginia, the president of the United States ordered 29 million doses. So it gives you an idea of the fact that the president of the United States and his staff and his advisors have come to the conclusion that hydroxychloroquine is worthwhile and it actually does provide some therapy to kill this virus. And that makes perfect sense. But the media spent days and weeks basically saying otherwise. I can't believe that we even had to have this debate, because that debate really belongs in the medical community, and you got to trust the President of the United States. And as you said, Warren, it's between you and your doctor at the end of the day. It's like the doctor says, hey, you might want to try this. There could be some side effects, but it could also save your life. And what are you going to do? You're going to say, yeah, I want to live.
Yeah.
So Trevor Noah was making fun of the president giving medical advice. So here's Trevor Noah basically parroting the mainstream media and saying that the President of the United States was providing medical advice. And Trevor Noah, by the way, is from The Daily Show. He's now calling it the Daily Social Distancing Show because he's just so woke. And he's talking about this saying, oh, why is the president giving medical advice? He doesn't know anything about hydroxychloroquine. Ha, 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 ha. Just like what the media did for 3 weeks. We have that clip. And here, why are we even listening to the president at all? Because he has doctors right there. Well, actually, the doctors have stepped up, and they've talked about it. You see it on the different media channels. But of course, if you look at MSNBC and CNN, they're actually saying, no, hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, literally saying that. I know you have a lot to talk about on this particular subject, Warren, because this is important.
Well, obviously, these press conferences and this task force that has been set up is not just the president pontificating on every single thing. he has a group of very knowledgeable advisors, and some of them happen to be from the medical community. And I guarantee you, he didn't sit in a vacuum and think, hey, let's take these two drugs, combine them, and it's a cure. Somebody in the medical community told him that this was effective. And he's got the best interest of the American people at heart.
And he's the president.
Right. So to have these woke talk show hosts try to contradict this based on politics, and it's all politics. There's not a realm of truth in anything they're saying. They're not talking to doctors. This guy didn't host a doctor on the show to claim it didn't work. So why would you bother to listen to him in the first place?
True. And of course, it's fascinating at the same time that you have Trevor Noah and the other so-called late night comedians. I mean, Trevor Noah is not even a comedian, because I don't think like 90% of the stuff that he says is funny, because all it is hyper politics attacking one party and one party. I don't think I've ever watched Trevor Noah where he made fun of the other side, the Democrat Party, ever. And the thing is, by the way, I have a great sense of humor. I don't mind him making fun of things, but this is a serious matter where he's literally undermining people's opinions, because a lot of people watch Trevor Noah for their news, sadly. A lot of millennials, right, Chris Hopkins? It's true.
If he's proven wrong, he's got blood on his hands.
That's exactly right. And so the media has pivoted from don't use hydroxychloroquine to now there isn't enough testing. Why, Mr. President, isn't there enough testing? Right, Warren?
So who should we blame? We should blame China and the World Health Organization. They didn't tell anybody about the seriousness of this until well after millions of Chinese left China for Lunar New Year festivals in New York and other places around the globe and spread this. And the World Health Organization had a responsibility to investigate this and to report accurately on what was going on, and instead they covered it up with the Chinese government. So if you want to blame somebody on late night talk radio, blame the Chinese, blame the World Health Organization. We didn't find out until January 20th how bad this was. And that's when the president took action, stopped these flights from China, stopped flights from Europe, stopped people moving around. And he was the first one. Our Senate Majority Leader and our House Speaker were both attacking him for stopping these flights, saying he was, you know, on
he was
this
being racist.
thing again, he was being racist
Because it was the Chinese, planes that were stopped from going back and forth from China to the United States.
Right. And what he was really doing was stopping the spread. It could be far worse now.
Absolutely. He saved a lot of lives as a result of it. And he saved a lot of the economy as a result of it not being more widespread across the United States. Incredibly great point. So in the Trump press conference, the media pivots to, as you just talked about, Warren, there isn't enough testing. From hydroxychloroquine doesn't work, that's what the media said initially, to there isn't enough testing. And so here's the media asking Donald Trump that, hey, despite the $1.8 million tests conducted in the U.S., the IG, or the Inspector General from the Department of Health and Human Services, says a lot of bad things. And you can see, after you hear a number of these particular clips, how the media, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, they're all cooperating with one another and coordinating to try to get the latest attack on the president and his staff. Here is the first clip. Here it is.
Is done. The Inspector General for the Department of Health and Human Services released a report today, a survey of more than 300 hospitals across the country, and the number one complaint from those hospitals were severe shortages of testing supplies and a really long wait time. I mean, a week or longer.
And did I hear the word Inspector General? Really? It's wrong. And they'll talk to you about it. It's wrong.
But this is your own government.
Well, where did he come from, the Inspector General? What's his name?
It came from the Inspector General
what's his name?
report.
What's
I don't know his name
Well,
off the top
find me
of
his
my
name.
head.
Let me know, okay? If
But-
you find me his name, I'd appreciate it.
But, sir, these are hospitals.
All I can tell you is this: we put up on the board. You're going to ask the admiral, but
These are
we are
hospitals
doing.
who say that they're waiting a week or longer
Fine.
to get their
Speak to
test
the admiral.
results. Why
But
is
we've
it
done
still
more
taking so
testing
long?
and had more results than any country anywhere in the world. They're doing an incredible job.
Hey, podcast listeners, this is Journalism 101. If you're going to ask the President of the United States a question and you're going to use a source and you're going to say the IG said, and the President says, well, what's the IG's name? And you don't even know the IG's name, one might believe that you're either coordinating with the IG, you're either lying about the fact that you don't know the IG's name, or that you didn't even talk to them because you didn't know the IG's name to begin with. I mean, this is Journalism 101, and it really shows you in my opinion, of course, you'll listen to subsequent clips as we talk about this particular subject, about not enough testing, about how the media is coordinating, because of course they knew who it was. Go ahead, Warren.
So in every state, if you look at the models and you look at the actual testing, you'll see the number of positives versus the number of negative tests. And the negative tests are running 10 to 20 to 1 for a positive test.
So for every 20
For
negatives,
every 10 or 20 negatives, you get one positive.
one positive, okay?
Okay. So let's talk about what happens. So you go to a testing center or you go to a hospital and you've got a fever and maybe you're coughing a little bit. 95% of the time, they're going to send you home to self-quarantine. So whether you get tested now or in a month, you're going to have antibodies. They're going to be able to tell with the test to say, yes, you had COVID-19. Most people, I think it's 97.5% of the population in the United States, are going to have mild symptoms. They're going to home, they're going to self-quarantine, and that's the end of it. It's the 2.5 to 3% that have compromised immune systems or elderly or have other reasons that actually end up going into one of these facilities where they need a ventilator, they need advanced medical care.
and in order to admit them, you need to test them.
Right.
To make sure because you need to take appropriate precautions if you admit them, right?
But we're wasting countless tests on people that think they have COVID-19, they have spring allergies or something, who knows?
And they're not on death's door.
Right.
They're not
on
having a
death's
hard
door.
time
That's the
breathing.
point. So, this thing about testing being the silver bullet, it's not. It's not. It's proper treatment. And so if you're able to go to the doctor and say, Doc, I think I get COVID-19 with or without a test, they prescribe you the drugs, the combination we talked about. In 2 days, you're better and you're back to the rest of your life.
Exactly. And then the media, of course, they talk about the IG, had the IG saying you're not doing enough and there aren't enough tests. And you did a great job, Warren, explaining the fact that when you don't have enough tests, which is clearly the case, you have to decide whom do you need to test because they're very, very likely to be admitted to this hospital right now. And you don't waste a test on someone who just has a sore throat or is sneezing, as you just said, because of the spring allergies. And so 20 minutes after that question was asked by that reporter, who didn't even know the IG's name, even though she was citing the IG, the reporter asked Trump another reporter asked Trump the same follow-up question, but you got to listen to this to believe it. And here's the clip.
If I can follow up on this question of the HHS Inspector General, and by the way, her name was Christy Grimm, and it wasn't so much her opinion, but they interviewed 323 different hospitals.
Well, it still could be her opinion. When was she appointed?
I'm not sure when she was
Would
appointed.
you do me a favor? Let me know.
I'll check.
No, let me know now. I have to know now, John. Let me know now.
But the point
Because
is-
we are doing an incredible job in testing. We are doing a better job than anybody in the world right now in testing. There's nobody close. And other nations admit this. Other nations have admitted it very strongly. Other nations are calling us, wanting to know about our testing. Let me know when she was appointed, would you?
Specifically,
Go ahead,
what she
please.
was saying was that there had been a delay in the lab.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead.
So there you have. So finally, this was a different reporter, of course, asking Trump the same question about the IG. And Trump, of course, says, well, thank you, but when were they appointed? And of course, the reporter really didn't know when she was appointed, because as you're going to hear from successive clips, this matters. This matters because there are a lot of deep staters that are holdovers from the Obama administration that are wreaking havoc on the United States of America, and they're wreaking havoc on the departments, and they're wreaking havoc on the President of the United States, which means, by definition, they don't have the American people's best interests in mind. So we're going to go, Warren, right to the next clip where, this is important because we're building on this, where Trump is asked, why isn't there enough testing again? And Trump provides a civics lesson. This is all, by the way, the same press conference. And all of the media is coordinating because it was hydroxychloroquine, now it's about testing. And here's the clip.
They were actually swamped. Okay, go ahead.
I know you don't want to talk about the Inspector General report, but testing is still a big issue in this country.
Can hear how upset he is.
When can hospitals
Put the
expect?
slide up again, please.
When can
Just put it in.
hospitals expect to receive a quick turnaround of
Are you
these
ready?
test results?
Are you ready? Hospitals can do their own testing also. States can do their own testing. States are supposed to be doing testing. Hospitals are supposed to be doing testing. Do you understand that? We're the federal government. Listen to me. We're the federal government. We're not supposed to stand on street corners doing testing. They go to doctors. They go to hospitals. They go to the state. The state is a more localized government. You have 50 of them, and they can go 50 within here. You also have territories, as you know. And they do the testing. And if you look at the chart, if you take a look, did they put it up? Yeah. Just take a look. And these are testing, and the results are now coming in very quickly. Initially speaking, the tests were old, obsolete, and not really prepared. We have a brand new testing system that we developed very quickly, and that's your result. And you should say, congratulations, great job, instead of being so horrid in the way you ask a question. Please, go ahead.
So here's the example of how stupid journalists can be and it's the effect of our education system in America teaching people about paternalism and the American economy. The idea that a reporter, a journalist, would ask a question of, well, Mr. President, why aren't you out there testing people individually? That's what it sounded like. And he's like, we're the United States of America. The hospitals do the testing. The health departments in the various counties and municipalities do the testing. The states obviously fund this and also run their own health departments and do testing. It's not the federal government's job to do the testing. It's our job to coordinate resources and to assist where needed. What am I missing here, Warren?
Well, what I'd like to see is one of these reporters ask Andrew Cuomo or Gavin Newsom or Meg Whitmer or others that I won't name, why didn't you procure the tests?
Exactly.
Where are they? Why didn't you get these quick enough? And you'll never hear that from the media because they want to blame the president for this. I will say one thing. I think these press conferences would be a lot better if there were no questions until the end, and you had the president come out, say what he wanted to say, let his particular people say what they wanted to say, and then let the press stew for 5 or 10 minutes, give them 2 questions, and then go. And get rid of this idiocracy in the White House press pool. These people are obviously there for political reasons. They're not there for news.
Amen. No, I agree. Kind of. Trump does come out initially and he does give a statement each day, actually twice a day now, sometimes 3, but typically twice per day. However, you're right. I mean, he gives them unlimited questions and he gives them a second and third drink of water because they ask a question and he goes around. I have to admit something. I actually enjoy these press conferences because for the first time in American history, we have a president who is exposing how important good journalism is and how destructive bad journalism is. And we're seeing it in real time at these press conferences where these journalists are literally lying. And we can tell, by the way, by this next clip, where 10 minutes after that last question about the IG, and where Trump says, well, what's their name? We have another reporter finally coming back because he gets the second drink of the water to ask a question, and he gives information to Trump and to the American people about this IG, their so-called source of how testing isn't going so well in America. And here's the clip.
And I don't know the Inspector General. I don't know that person. I tell you one thing I have a problem with. If there was such a problem that she knew about or he knew about on March 23rd and 24th, why did I find out about the tests from them on the news media at 8 o'clock this morning? If there was a problem, I think you're ethically obliged to tell me where that is so we can interact with it like I do every single day. But that's a discussion for the future. I think testing is really in a good position right now, and I'd be happy to expand on some of the really good tests that are coming up.
How long has that person been in government? Can I ask you that?
Did serve in the previous administration.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I see. You didn't tell me that, John. You didn't tell me that. Did serve in the previous administration. You mean the Obama administration. Thank you for telling me that. See, there's a typical fake news deal.
You asked me when she was appointed. I told you when she was appointed.
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay? You asked me, you said, sir, just got appointed. Take a look at what you said now. I said, when did this person, how long in government? Well, it was appointed in the Obama administration. Thank you very much, John.
Sir?
Thank you very much. You will never make it. Go ahead, please.
It's just, oh my gosh, that is just a home run. Because John, the reporter, obviously was trying to hide the fact that this particular IG was appointed, he said, the reporter did, only a year ago, when in fact, the reporter, while that may be the case, only serving a year in that particular job, they've been in government and appointed by the Obama administration. They're part of the deep state, the IG is. And that's why the IG is attacking at a time when the government needs to be unified to fight this crisis, to fight this pandemic. We have an IG that's wreaking havoc and reporters who are making it happen. They're enabling it. Warren.
So you have 8 years of Obama appointing people with his agenda, and it's unfortunate for this administration to be 2-3 years in, and every time you turn around, one of these people is popping their head up and trying to destroy the president for partisan reasons. They are political appointees. They serve at the pleasure of the president. It's incumbent on him and his staff to go through and get rid of every one of these cancerous people in his administration. There's no excuse for it. I don't care how good of a person they are. They're there with dishonest intent, and every chance they get, they're in there leaking stuff to the news. They're hurting the country. They're doing dangerous things, and the president has every right to remove them. So I would certainly hope within the next week that IG gets her "you're no longer needed."
Well, funny you should say that, because 5 minutes before we came into this podcast, there is in the Gateway Pundit, which oftentimes is correct, sometimes it's not, but I have to admit it's been more correct lately than incorrect, says that Trump has reportedly fired a number of deep state IGs, all at the same time, since yesterday's press conference. Now, that has not been confirmed, but boy, you read that right, Warren. I mean, the only question is why have they managed to survive all of this time? Probably because they're so embedded in government, and government is so large. You tell me why.
So having worked in government, having worked in presidential personnel in the years past, every administration has a different thing that happens. When President Reagan came into office, he got rid of everybody on day one. When George H.W. Bush came into office, he got rid of most of the Reagan appointees on day one. When Bill Clinton came into office, he gave me the boot. I was gone. He got rid of all of the Bush, Reagan, political appointees that were around. But the funny thing is there is a double standard. And the clear double standard is if it's a Republican administration, they want to get rid of everybody, the press criticizes them. And it depends on the leadership of that president at that point in time, how much criticism they want to take for
when they're first
removing
elected.
These appointees. Now, for some reason, this administration, when it started, they didn't go through and clean house like they should have.
Mistake.
And I'll fault this administration for that. It's not a hard process to identify who all these people are and all the pockets where they are. It's incumbent also not just on the president, but the cabinet secretaries. When they inherit these bureaucracies, they also have to have reliable people working for them, and they're usually given deference by the president to bring their own team in.
And they're coordinating with the media.
So here at this point, we still have these moles, if you will, or whatever they are, and they're trying to hurt the operation of the federal government. It should be a black mark against the former president, number one. And these people that are acting with bad intent, yes, at the very least it should be fired, but you really have to question somebody taking a federal paycheck with bad intent towards the American people, because that's what these people are doing.
Yes, they are.
Let's make no mistake about it. They're doing an un-American thing. They're not helping the government. They're not helping our citizens.
No, in a time of crisis of all times, too.
And they need to leave.
Absolutely.
And they should do it voluntarily.
They're a cancer. And the media is making it even worse because they're coordinating with these individuals. And that's fascinating background, too, Warren. It is, because here we are in an election year. So we're in year 4 of Donald Trump's term, and we still have these deep staters from the Obama administration. And you're right, it was a big mistake not to clean house. And it's surprising, because that's usually something that Donald Trump has no problems with whatsoever. But because he's not from government, he probably didn't know.
Well, there's another issue at stake here, and it comes down to the U.S. Senate. Because for the higher level appointees, they need Senate confirmation. And remember, one senator can hold up a nomination. You need 60 votes to trump that, okay? We don't have 60 votes in the U.S. Senate. And when the president started, I believe the Democrats ran the Senate.
That's right.
And then the Republicans got it back. But so you've had 3 years of this president not being able to send names to the Senate with a clear line of being able to get those names, those nominees.
It's a great point.
Senate confirmation. So in some cases, he had to hold over IGs and others because he knew he couldn't go to the Hill with the people he wanted and get them confirmed.
Got it. Makes perfect sense. And by the way, an epic opportunity or an epic event happened at this press conference, and that's because a Chinese reporter was in the press corps at the press conference and asked the President of the United States about the generosity of Chinese companies to the United States as a result of this pandemic. And Trump's response is epic. And this is the same press conference, but of course, I was actually happy. Podcast listeners, you might be upset that there was a Chinese reporter there. I'm happy. I'm happy because this is important. It's important to watch how you have a reporter from these reporters from foreign countries, and they're asking these questions, and it tells you everything you need to know about this president and how he's going to react once this pandemic is behind us, and also about who our true friends and enemies are. And here is the clip.
Thank you, Mr. President. Only last week, there were multiple flights coming from China full of medical supplies.
Yes.
Companies like Huawei and Alibaba has been donating to the United States
People I know very well.
1.5 million N95 masks and also a lot of medical gloves and much more medical supplies.
Sounds like a statement more than a question.
And Chinese Ambassador Cui Tiankai last night wrote an op-ed on New York Times calling to cooperation with the United States. So are you personally working directly with China?
We just signed a trade deal.
Also fighting with the
It's the
virus?
biggest deal probably ever made, and I hope they're going to honor that trade deal. If they don't honor the trade deal, then I'll tell you a different answer. But I think they will. They're going to spend billions of dollars for agriculture. They're going to spend billions of dollars for many different things, whereas
Well,
China
medical
never spent
supplies.
money in our country. We spent money. We had a deficit, a trade deficit with China for years of $500 billion, $400 billion. We had the biggest trade deficits in the history of the world with China. Now China's going to spend a lot, has agreed to spend $250 billion, many billions of dollars in our country, much of it going to farmers and manufacturers. So I'll let you know. I mean, I hope they're going to honor the deal. We'll find
with
out.
China, are you cooperating with
I don't
China?
know. Who are you working for? China? You work for
I'm
China, or are
working
you with a
for Hong
newspaper?
Kong.
Who are you with?
Hong Kong Phoenix TV.
Who owns that? China?
It's
Is it owned by
based in
China?
Hong Kong.
No, is it owned by the state?
No, it's not. It's a private owned company.
Okay, good. Okay. Look, I'll let you know. I'll give you a good answer to that in a few months. I wanted to see what they do. Because it's time for them to help us, okay? It's time right now for China to help us. And hopefully they do. And if they don't, that's okay too. But we signed a deal. It was signed with great goodwill and spirit. And it's time that our farmers benefited, our manufacturers benefited, and we'll see whether or not that deal is honored. And I think it will be, because I know President Xi, who I like and respect, and I think he will honor the deal he made with us. It just went into effect 4 days ago. I will see whether or not.
Yes, so there you go. So look, we apologize for the long length, the length of that long clip there, but that was important. It's important because what you're seeing is a Chinese reporter talking and asking questions of the President of the United States, something that would never happen in China, by the way, because it's not allowed. You can't have President Xi does not have press conferences, and he sure as heck is not going to allow other countries to embed reporters there to ask questions. But this reporter said, well, Huawei and Alibaba have given lots of supplies to the United States. First of all, Huawei is a Chinese telecommunications maker. I know a little bit about this. Huawei is the company that makes the Chinese telecommunications equipment, whose sole purpose it is to basically surveil people who have cell phones, which is everybody in China. So basically, they're listening to all of your conversations to make sure that you're not saying anything that's against the state. Warren.
So a couple things. I think when they did the research after the president questioned this person, the largest stake in this news media organization is 85%, and it's an individual that belongs to the People's Republic of China. He's a Communist Party member. So it is Chinese-run media.
It's Chinese-controlled,
exactly.
Bottom line.
Exactly.
So this lady, this reporter, works for a Chinese-controlled journalist company, if you will.
Secondly, I've read various reports of Spain, other countries buying testing kits from China that don't work, buying. And then I've also heard reports China early on was buying up large supplies last December when they first started having a problem in Wuhan, buying up large supplies of masks and other items, or they were being donated. And now they're reselling those things for a profit.
Ha.
So you have to be careful. Some of the stuff is counterfeit. Some of the stuff doesn't work. And some of the other stuff they're profiteering off of something they created.
Absolutely.
And it's just awful.
Absolutely. That clip was worth listening to, and listening to a Chinese reporter talk propaganda about how Chinese companies are helping the United States by donating. It's like, you guys donated the virus. Thanks a lot. We don't want anything else from you. Yep. Thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. So finally, in the same press conference, Donald Trump says, you know what, I wish we had a fair media in this country, but we really don't. It was pretty awesome, also epic. It's worth listening to. This completes the clips from that press conference. It was just incredible. And here is the clip.
I think so. I think it's done very well.
Wells Fargo has stopped taking applications. Bank of America
Not anymore, they haven't.
prioritized taking applications from clients that were already
Bank of
borrowers.
America has been the leader, taking tremendous numbers of applications. And of course, they wanted to have a slightly different application. They wanted to have a little different information. But Bank of America has been a leader. They're number one in terms of applications. I wish you'd ask the question differently. Why don't you say it's gotten off to a tremendous start, but there are some little glitches, which, by the way, have been worked out. It would be so much nicer if you do that. But you're just incapable of asking a question in a positive way.
Is the federal government
It's
putting
already
in
done.
place
It's already
to
done.
ensure that there is
It's taken the
fairness?
measures. It's taken the measures. And we may even do a different system. Not with this. We're going to have to probably add more money to this to save and to keep our small businesses going and to keep the employees of those small businesses working. But it's such a positive event, and you ask it in such a negative way. It just, I wish we had a fair media in this country, and we really don't. Speaking of unfair, go ahead.
So the president ends up with, speaking unfair, go ahead. He asks another person and basically refers to them as someone that's unfair. So look, I have an interesting thing to add to this. What the president was being criticized for was the fact that Bank of America in particular was getting the money out from the stimulus to businesses, which only were businesses that already had a depository and loan relationship with them. That is actually true. There's a lot of evidence certainly in this state, Maryland, where Bank of America would only loan you money through the SBA if you already owed Bank of America money. It's a way of Bank of America shoring up their loans, essentially. That was not the purpose of the stimulus. The purpose of the stimulus was to make the money available to anyone who applies to the bank who is in business and needs assistance. That was the purpose. So having said that, we also have to give kudos to the federal government because the $2.2 trillion stimulus was just passed. It was just passed. The idea is to get the money to the economy as fast as possible, but this is government, ladies and gentlemen. Government doesn't do anything fast. And it certainly does lots of things not very well. And now we're talking about pushing money into the economy and doing it as fast as possible. I have no doubt the faster you go, the more mistakes are going to be made, whereby money goes to perhaps companies that shouldn't be getting it. You know what I'm saying, right, Warren? I mean, expand on this. This is important.
Well, we've said it before, greed kills capitalism.
Yes, it does.
And as much as there is good intent from both the Congress and the president to help our small businesses, there are people out there that want to profiteer.
Absolutely.
And they will at every point. And certainly there are going to need to be investigations after this money's handed out. And I sure hope the people that really need it are the ones that get it.
Yes.
Sadly, in our political process, it's typically not what happens.
It's not.
It's your friend, your friend's friend.
Yep.
They benefit first, and the people that are really hurting and really need the help that try to get it. And I've got a number of people that reached out to me for help, and it's impossible.
It is.
It's a federal maze. I mean, our state did something too. They ran out of money very quickly. They found out that
Overnight.
a couple $1 million doesn't go that far.
No.
And a couple $1 billion doesn't go that far when it comes to a crisis like this. And in the near term, we have counties and states doing their budgets right now, and they want to spend more money. And the sad reality is for the next quarter or two, they're not going to have more money. They're going to have write-downs, huge write-downs in their budgets.
Yes, they are.
And government is going to feel pain like they've not since the Great Depression have they felt pain like this.
It's so true. It's
and
so true.
If we have a comptroller in Maryland telling people not to pay their bills.
Don't pay their bills. Who does that?
So what happens? So you don't pay your mortgage, which means your property taxes and escrow aren't being paid. Your insurance isn't being paid. That means the bank doesn't get its money. But at the end of the day, who doesn't get their money? The government.
The government.
And what's the government going to do? I mean, how serious is this going to be? But we're going to have colossal write-downs in our budgets because people aren't working. They're not paying their payroll tax.
I'm glad you brought up the comptroller of Maryland, because the comptroller of Maryland, just to clarify, said what you said, which is don't pay your bills.
Right, keep your money.
Who in government says that, right? I mean, the whole idea is if you have the ability to pay your bills, pay your bills.
Right.
And likewise, if you have a business, which that question was to the President of the United States, the question was, we have $350 billion that's supposed to go through the SBA, Small Business Administration, for businesses. And Mr. President, it's our understanding that Bank of America is not playing fair. That's really what the question was.
Right.
And there is evidence that that is the case, okay? There is evidence that that is the case. And the proper answer, of course, and I am being critical in this case of Donald Trump, the proper answer would have been, you know what? There were problems. And we've looked into them, and we're now in the process of fixing them. Many are fixed, but we are fixing them. But we also recognize there isn't enough money for the small businesses in America, so we need another stimulus for that specific purpose. The problem is the President of the United States has to deal with Nancy Pelosi, who could care less about small businesses in the United States of America. All she cares about is basically making this a socialist country. And that is the conundrum the President of the United States is in. But will the media even report that and create a fair story? Oh no. Oh no. So next up, we have the daily social distancing show, Trevor Noah. Once again, he makes fun of people going to church and violating social distancing. So as you know, it's Passover in the Jewish faith. Easter Sunday is coming up. And there's also Passover. There's also Palm Sunday that just took place. So this is really the Holy Week, right? An important time of the year for Western civilization, if you will. And Trevor Noah is making fun of it because, they're not social distancing, they're going to church. We have a clip on this, and I just think this is kind of disgusting. And here it is. I find that disgusting, quite frankly, because it's Holy Week, and not only is Trevor Noah making fun of people who are faithful in the United States during what is in Western civilization one of the most important times of the year, Holy Week, but he's also making fun of basically people who are conservative who own guns. And he's trying to create a nexus between the two and Jesus. I mean, help me out here, Warren. What the heck?
So you're listening to an atheist, somebody that obviously hasn't gotten the message of faith. That's first and foremost. And there is no comparison between somebody buying a gun and somebody going to church.
No, there's not.
There's no nexus there. So this guy is just totally off the charts crazy in my book.
And people watch him. Millennials, Christopher Hopkins, I'm not saying that you do, but many millennials will tune him on. By the way, my son does, and I'm not throwing him under the bus, but they watch him because, he's considered to be part of their generation and woke and cool and all that stuff. And so that's why we cover him, and we try to cover many of these comedians, at least that's what they call themselves. I think they're political activists, and I think that they should actually be considered, their time on air should be considered donations to political officials in the Democrat Party, because it really is a donation. That's really what they're doing. They're not really providing any kind of humor or public service. So that said, next up we have the dumbest bill in America. And Mr. Christopher Hopkins, do we have some lead up music to the dumbest bill in America? Let's hear it.
Dum 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 dum. Dum 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 dum.
That, of course, is from South Park, so we got to give them kudos on that. And we won't say what they were making fun of, because I'm sure our listeners would know if they are South Park enthusiasts. So the dumbest bill in America is banning self-service gasoline stations. Yeah, you heard that. Banning your right to self-serve gas. When you pull up, you get out of your car, you walk over to the gasoline pump, you put your credit card in, it gets approved, you take the gas pump off, and then you put it inside your car, you fill up that would be banned. In the state of Illinois, House Bill 4571, introduced by Illinois State Representative, this is the state representative, Camille Lilly, Democrat from Chicago, of course, has House Bill 4571 to ban your ability to pump your own gas. This is really stupid, of course, but I want you to hear it from Camille Lilly herself. Here's her justification for her bill. Here's the clip.
She was often hearing about the carjacking, those kinds of things. And so she was always nervous about going in, paying for her gas, and leaving her children in the car by themselves. And she was like, wait a minute, why do I have to get out and pump gas? And in her community, it became a challenge for her. So she said, can we get the gas attendants everywhere? Because some stations do have gas attendants, but it's not required.
So this is paternalism at its worst, right? Well, she couldn't figure out, with her children in the car, she couldn't figure out how to turn the car off, maybe take the keys with her, then walk around and pump her own gas, because that was difficult. Really? I mean, what is wrong with these people? And by these people, I want everybody to be clear, anyone who thinks that they're too lazy or they're too special, that they shouldn't be able to pump their own gas. I'm not talking about people that are developmentally disabled or have some sort of handicap, okay? Let's make this clear, right? I'm talking about anyone who's like, I just don't feel like doing it. Someone else should do it for me. Warren, throwing this to you.
So most states have special needs accommodations at gas stations. They have a button you can push or blow the horn or something, and somebody will come out and take care of you if you truly need the assistance. What this bill is doing is modeling after New Jersey. They want extra people working at service stations. Well, service stations have all these ridiculous employment mandates, paid sick leave, unemployment insurance, all these government mandates that have to be covered.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, you're cutting into the service station owner's profits. You're already charging a high sum. I'm sure Illinois has borders just like Maryland. People drive over the borders all the time to get their gas.
Yes,
Maybe
they
not
do.
in Chicago, but in a big part of the state that's rural, between the taxes and everything else, they're going to drive over the line to self-serve and get the cheapest price. That's what this comes down to. And this is a mandate to make Illinois' gasoline purchasers' gas more expensive.
And you're right, there is a button, and apparently in Illinois, some service stations, not all, because it's not required universally, have a button that you can push if you need assistance. That is to say, someone, to pump your gas. Problem is, you still got to get out of the car to push the button, okay? So, quite frankly, if you're capable of getting out of the car and pushing a button, you're probably capable of pumping your own gas. But you know what? We used to live in a society and a country where when you identified individuals who needed that level of assistance, they didn't even go to the gas station to begin with. Someone would drive them there and fill their car up. Or someone would drive with them and fill their car up. Or someone would just take their car for them and fill their car up with gasoline. But no, now we need a paternalistic society in Illinois, according to Camille Lilly, the Democrat from Chicago. And here's a clip of the public's reaction in Illinois to State Representative Camille Lilly's bill. And you have to listen to at the end of this, because this is a news media talking and then interviewing somebody, and then at the end telling you how high their taxes are on gasoline already, some of the highest in the nation. And here's the clip.
I think it's stupid. I mean, it would create jobs for the community, but at the same end, it's going to create delays for people who are trying to get their gas and get on their way.
Something that you've been capable of doing thus far in your life?
Yes, I've done it for many, many years by myself with no issues.
The industry is opposed to. Director of the State Association for Convenience Stores and Petroleum Marketers, Josh Sharp, says drivers are focused on one thing: price. Already, Illinois drivers are paying more at the pump. The state tax on motor fuel doubled this summer to 38 cents a gallon. That's not including the sales tax or local taxes. On average, he says the gas tax burden in Illinois is 52 cents a gallon, one of the highest in the nation.
52 cents a gallon just for the taxes in Illinois. So if you live in Illinois, if you live there and you're saying, why is our gas so expensive as compared to when I cross the border into Indiana or some of the other states that Illinois border, here's why. 52 cents a gallon on average. And do you think that a mandate from Representative Camille Lilly, who would say, now you have to hire a bunch of people to pump your gas for you because we're not going to allow you to do that, that's going to cost money, so it's going to make the gasoline even more expensive. Because one person in Chicago decided that this is what she wanted to do. Warren.
Well, another issue here I was just thinking of, let's say you do have low staff at your gas station, you're barely making a living, because a lot of people don't realize gas stations don't own their gas. they're given a rack price, and that price can change during the day. Whatever's in their tanks, the distributor, the person that brings in the gas, controls the price they sell it for.
Exactly.
So that could be the difference between 2 and 5 cents profit on a gallon can be huge for a dealer who doesn't make that much. Okay, so one of the things you're doing is putting a labor mandate on them that's going to cost them more. It might eat into their profits. But the second thing is, if they try to make it with the 1 or 2 attendants that they have, this is an easy setup for crime.
Oh, yes.
You get that person to leave the booth they're in to come out and pump the gas. Somebody else can easily break in while they're pumping gas or hold them up or whatever. And it's just unworkable, in my opinion, considering the amount of crime that goes on in places like Chicago.
Absolutely. And you know what? When I was a kid, my father bought an Esso gas station. Esso, that's the precursor to Exxon. And my father bought the gas station, and 6 months later, after he bought it, there was the Arab oil embargo to the United States, and there were hundreds of cars in line waiting to get gasoline because of the fact that gasoline was being rationed. And at that time, there was no self-serve whatsoever. It did not exist as a concept. And so I was allowed, because it was my father's gas station, I used to pump gas, not just then during the crisis in the 70s, but also afterwards. And I enjoyed it because I would check people's oil, I would wash their windows, and they would usually tip me. I loved that, all right? So there was no self-service then. But what's different is government has decided throughout the 50 states, not just some, but all of them, including the federal government, that they're going to take an increased share of taxes from the citizens of the United States, making gasoline so expensive that the gas stations had to go and offer self-serve to try to save people money so the gas stations didn't have to hire people, which would, as you said, Warren, increase the cost of the station, causing them to increase the cost of gasoline. But now we have a representative in Illinois that says, well, that 52 cents a tax per gallon, we're going to make you even spend more. And of course, she's going to be the first one to come back after her stupid bill passes, which, by the way, it hasn't, at least not yet. But she's going to be the first one to come back and say, oh, by the way, now we need subsidies for people in Chicago to be able to help them pay for the gasoline. Here's an idea. Why don't you get rid of the 52 cents a gallon? That might help. So last but not least, here's Representative Camille Lilly about how call buttons for disabled persons are not required in Illinois when you go to a gas station. We kind of talked about that a little bit, but this is just kind of the last clip in this episode. You got to listen to it because you can just kind of get an idea of how she thinks. And here's the clip.
Not every gas station has that. So someone that's disabled have to know where that gas station is, and that's the only gas station they can go to get that kind of service. It is important that we are looking at safety at the pump and convenience at the pump.
So yeah, there you go. We're looking at safety at the pump and convenience at the pump. You know what? If you don't like that gas station, go to another one. That's how it works. Find someone who, ask your family to help you. If you don't want to get out of the car and you're perfectly able-bodied and you can't get out of the car, I'm not even sure what to say at that point. I mean, final thoughts on this, Warren.
Feel-good legislation. It's making somebody feel good.
Exactly.
It's not solving a problem. It's just making somebody feel good.
Just make someone feel good, because it seems like in the United States, and we've talked about this before, it's all about banning on the Democrat side. Ban, 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 ban. So much for the freedom. So that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. I want to give a special thanks to Warren Miller, and I want to thank our Millennials for not being here. And also, I want to thank Christopher Hopkins, and of course, Adam Couture. And please check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and our website. See you next time.